Welcome to Mother's Revenge, a place where meaningful stories reach you and may even move you deeply. The Medicaid clerk's face drained of color as she stared at her monitor. "Mr. Miller?" she whispered. "According to this, you passed away in 1990. For a second, I thought I misheard her. My name is Ethan James Miller, and I was very much alive, sitting in that cramped government office with calloused hands holding expired insurance papers. The buzzing fluorescent lights cast sharp shadows across the worn walls. People around me waited quietly, unaware that everything I understood about my life was about to shift. "That's not possible," I said, leaning forward in the plastic chair that groaned under my weight. I had used that social security number since my first job at 18. The clerk, a middle-aged woman with gentle eyes behind thick glasses, typed again. Her confusion slowly turned into something closer to fear. She glanced at me, then the screen, then reached for her phone with unsteady hands. I was 32, recently laid off from the lumber mill, and down to $52. And somehow, I either didn't exist, or existed as someone who had supposedly died nearly 30 years ago. Behind me, I could almost feel the presence of my stepfather, Gary Dawson, the man who threw me out 15 years earlier. His words still echoed in my mind. "You're not my blood and never will be." Gary married my mother, Carol, when I was 8, 2 years after my biological father, Richard Miller, died in a trucking accident. From the start, Gary treated me like unwanted baggage. He never hit or starved me, but he constantly made it clear I didn't belong. His daughter, Emily, received new clothes, new toys, and parties with her friends. I received thrift store leftovers and dinner in silence. On the morning I turned 18, my bags were already at the door. Gary stood with his arms folded, a look of satisfaction on his weathered face. "You're a man now," he said. "Not my responsibility. Time to make your own way." My mother stood in the kitchen doorway, unable to meet my eyes. She said nothing as I picked up my things and left. Emily, just 12 at the time, watched from her window with her hand pressed to the glass and tears on her face. She was the only one who seemed affected by my leaving. For the next 15 years, I built everything on my own. Construction jobs, warehouse shifts, then the lumber mill. I didn't ask anyone for help, didn't accept charity, and refused to look back. I convinced myself I didn't need a family, didn't need Gary's acceptance, and didn't need my mother's support. My pride and paycheck were enough, until the mill shut down, until a work injury went uncovered, until medical bills drained my savings, and I ended up here asking for help for the first time in my adult life. After hanging up the phone, the clerk looked at me with an expression I had never seen directed at me before. A mix of concern and detachment, like someone viewing an accident they were grateful not to be part of. "Mr. Miller," she said carefully, as though worried I might leave, "I need you to stay seated. My supervisor is on the way." "What is happening?" I asked, my voice rising enough for others to look over. A security guard shifted closer to his radio. "Is something wrong with my documents?" She shook her head. "Sir, the social security number you've been using was flagged by INTERPOL in the mid-90s. It belonged to a child reported deceased in a 1990 trucking accident along with his father." The lights seemed to grow harsher. The room tilted, though maybe that was just me. "My father died in a trucking accident," I said slowly. "In 1997. I was 6. I remember the funeral." "The child who died was 3, she said quietly. Then a tall man in a navy suit approached her desk. He examined the screen, then studied my face like he was piecing something together. For a moment, his professional calm slipped, and in that moment, I saw something that unsettled me more than anything Gary had ever said: recognition. "Dear God," he murmured. He straightened and told the clerk, "Lock down his file immediately. Don't contact anyone else. I need to make a specific phone call." Then he looked at me and spoke with the weight of something long hidden. "Mr. Miller, or whoever you truly are, you need to prepare yourself. Everything you believe about your life is about to change." Sitting in that plastic chair with $52 in my wallet and my hands shaking, I realized that being rejected at 18 for not being Gary's blood was nothing compared to the possibility that I wasn't anyone's blood at all. Not in the way I'd believed. The person who thought he was Ethan James Miller was about to learn that his entire life was built on someone else's identity. I never imagined I'd be here, 32, unemployed, in a Medicaid office with my last few dollars tucked away like a reminder of everything I'd run from. The room smelled of disinfectant and heavy discouragement. Many people around me had reached the same point of having no options left. But unlike them, I had spent years insisting I didn't need help. My hands explained my life better than any story. Scars from construction, calluses from warehouse shifts, fresh cuts from the mill that had let me go 6 weeks earlier. These hands built my independence, paycheck after paycheck, since the day Gary pushed me out at 18. My mother married Gary when I was 8. Before that, it had been just the two of us trying to move forward after my father died. I still remember when she explained the accident, how his truck jackknifed on a slick Charleston highway in September 1997. I was 6, old enough to understand loss, but too young to know how deeply it would change everything. "We're going to be okay, baby," she whispered at the funeral, holding me tightly. "Mommy's going to take care of everything." 2 years later, she introduced Gary, a power company supervisor with a good salary and a large house. To her, he must have seemed like stability. To me, he looked like a man calculating the cost of taking on another man's child. Gary had a daughter, Emily, 2 years younger than me, small and cheerful like a porcelain doll. Once we moved into his home, the separation was clear. Emily had dance lessons, new outfits, and big birthday parties. I had donations from the church and small birthdays with a grocery store cake. "Money doesn't grow on trees," Gary would say when I wondered why Emily received what I didn't. "You prioritize family." The message was consistent. I wasn't family, just the responsibility that came with my mother. My grandmother, Margaret Miller, my father's mother, tried to stay connected. She called every Sunday, sent birthday cards with $20, and invited me to spend summers with her in Sarasota. But Gary always had a reason I couldn't go. "Boy needs to work and build character," he told my mother. "Can't be running off every time something feels hard." So instead of spending summers with her, I mowed lawns and saved every dollar. Gary never took my money, but he made sure I understood that every meal and night under his roof was charity. "Your dad should have had better insurance," he'd say after a few beers. "A man should provide even after he's gone." My mother withdrew more each year, becoming quiet, distant, and almost invisible in her own home. Emily tried to bridge the divide. She'd sneak me cookies she baked with Gary or let me use her TV when he took over the living room. But she was still a child trying to manage her own place in a family built on unequal treatment. When I turned 18, it was a Friday. I returned from my grocery store shift to find 2 duffel bags by the door containing my clothes, a few books, and a manila envelope with my birth certificate and social security card. "You're a man now," Gary said from his recliner. "Time to make your own way. Not my responsibility anymore. Never really were." I looked at my mother standing in the kitchen doorway, twisting a dish towel. "Mom." She opened her mouth, closed it, and walked away. That was the full goodbye. Emily ran outside as I loaded my bags into my old Honda Civic. I apologized to Ethan, but he told me it wasn't my fault. I meant it when I told him to take care of himself. That was 15 years ago. Since then, I worked any job I could find, saved every dollar, and built a life that wasn't much, but it was mine. No assistance, no charity, no relying on anyone again. Until the lumber mill shut down. Until the forklift accident damaged my shoulder. Until the medical bills stacked up quickly. Until I ended up in this government office realizing that everything I built might be tied to someone else's identity. The Medicaid office felt smaller each minute. Mrs. Linda Ramirez, the clerk handling my application, kept looking between her computer and me as if trying to solve something that didn't add up. The regular office sounds, typing, phones, quiet conversations faded into the background. I repeated that I only needed temporary coverage until I found work. The mill would reopen in spring, and I already had a callback. Mrs. Ramirez nodded without focus as she typed. She asked for my social security number. I recited the 9 digits I had used since my first job at 18, 604783192. Those digits defined my presence in every record: government, employment, taxes. Her hands stopped. She deleted and retyped slower this time. Her expression tightened. She leaned in, then suddenly pulled back. She said there was an issue with the number. I gripped the edge of the desk, insisting I had used it for 15 years without trouble. She turned the monitor slightly away, but I still saw red text and warning icons, nothing like a normal form. She told me the number had been flagged by Interpol in 1994. I said the word too loudly, drawing attention. I knew Interpol was international law enforcement, and I couldn't imagine why they would be concerned with my number. Mrs. Ramirez called someone on her desk phone, her hands unsteady. She explained the number belonged to a child reported deceased in 1990, a boy named Ethan James Miller, who died with his father in a trucking accident. The floor felt unstable. I said that couldn't be right. My father also died in a trucking accident, but that was in 1997 when I was 6. I remembered the funeral, my mother crying, the casket. Her tone shifted to something formal as she told me to stay seated. She called for Mr. Marcus Cole to come to Station 3 immediately regarding the flagged SSN. The guard near the exit repositioned, hand on his radio. People were staring, some with their phones out. Sweat rolled down my back despite the cold air. I tried to leave, saying I could return later if there was a paperwork problem, but she stopped me. A minute later, Marcus Cole arrived, tall, late 50s, carrying the calm authority of years in government work. His suit was perfect, his expression steady until he saw the screen. Then he looked at me, back at the monitor, and again at me. He put on his glasses and leaned in. His expression shifted through confusion, recognition, then something close to disbelief. He whispered, "Dear God," then instructed Mrs. Ramirez to lock my file and not contact anyone until he made a specific call. I demanded to know what was happening and reminded them I had done nothing wrong. I only needed medical coverage. Cole studied me closely. He asked if Ethan James Miller was the name I had always used. I confirmed it and listed my parents: Carol Miller, maiden name Porter, and Richard Miller. He asked when my father died. I repeated the date and details. Cole wrote notes carefully, then asked my age at the time. I said 6, nearly 7. Then he asked whether I remembered anything before that age. I said yes, birthday parties, Christmas, playing in our apartment complex. But when pressed for specific details, the memories felt blurry. I recalled a yellow kitchen, my mother singing while cooking, my father's laugh, but the details faded when I focused on them. He asked about childhood friends before age 6. I said I didn't know because we moved often after my father's death, but he pointed out my father allegedly died when I was 6, so why would we have moved a lot before that? The inconsistency hit immediately. I admitted it didn't make sense. Cole then explained that the mismatched memories, the errors in my early years, and the use of a deceased child's identity all suggested a single possibility. I might have been abducted as a young child and raised under a false identity. I called it impossible, but parts of my life started aligning with the idea. Gary's hostility, my mother's hesitation discussing my father, the complete lack of photos before age 7. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number told me to stay where I was and said my real mother had been searching for me for 32 years. It was signed by Agent Dana Blake from the FBI's Missing Children Division. The room spun. Ramirez said something about protocol. Cole spoke quietly on his phone. The guard stood closer. I realized I was a 32-year-old man learning that my identity came from a child who died decades ago. I stood, unsteady but firm, saying I had done nothing wrong and never knowingly used stolen information. Cole reassured me that no one accused me of a crime and asked me to sit so they could understand what was happening. Mrs. Ramirez quietly asked if Ethan James Miller was even my real name. I said it was the only one I had ever known and sat back down. Cole asked for my earliest memory. He wanted what I personally remembered, not what I had been told. I tried again. The yellow kitchen? Sunflower wallpaper. My mother singing, "You Are My Sunshine," but the details kept slipping out of reach. He asked about friends before age 6. I repeated that we moved often. But again, the timeline didn't fit. Cole leaned forward and said that the number I used belonged to a 3-year-old who died in 1994. That child was also named Ethan James Miller, and his father was Richard Miller. They died together in an accident 3 years earlier than I believed, and the boy was 3 years younger than I thought I had been. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Agent Blake said to come to the federal building on East Lincoln Avenue, 5th floor, because my birth parents were flying in from Tulsa. They had searched for me since 1991. I showed the text to Cole, and he confirmed he had spoken with the FBI. He said I needed to go with them, but asked one more question. Where was the woman who raised me? I told him I lost contact after Gary threw me out and that Emily, my half-sister, said Mom moved out west after divorcing Gary. Cole checked his phone and said the FBI already had her in custody in Utah under the name Carol Jenkins. The room shifted again. She had been arrested and wanted for kidnapping since 1991. Cole explained that my name wasn't Ethan and that the real Ethan had died with his father when he was 3. After losing her son, Carol apparently took another child, me. I thought about the way she held me too tightly at times, the way she looked at me with feelings I once read as love, but now recognized as something else, guilt or fear. I suddenly realized Gary must have known, which explained his behavior, and why he pushed me out at 18. Cole said Gary called the FBI that morning after seeing news of Carol's arrest. Gary said she confessed when I was 17 and begged him to wait until I was legally an adult. He agreed, only if I left and didn't return. Instead of telling me the truth, he forced me out. Anger rose again, steady and familiar. He let me believe for 15 years that I was worthless, unwanted, and not his blood, when the truth was that I had been taken from my actual family. The FBI agents will explain everything, Cole said as he stood. They have DNA proof, photos, and a full case file. He told me my real name was Noah Wade Hayes and that my parents were Laura and Stephen Hayes from Tulsa. I had been taken from a grocery store parking lot at 6 months old. I tried to stand, though my legs felt unfamiliar. My real parents were alive, and they had never stopped searching for me. My mother now ran the Hayes Family Center for Missing Children. My father was a retired mechanic. I also had a younger brother named Aaron, who was born after I disappeared. Mrs. Ramirez printed something and handed it to me, a photo from a website showing a family at an event. The woman had my eyes, the man had my jaw, and the young man between them looked like someone I could have been in another life. They never gave up, Mrs. Ramirez said quietly. For 32 years, they believed I was alive. I looked at the photo of the people who were actually my family, while I had been raised by a woman who took me to replace her deceased son. The $52 in my wallet no longer mattered, nor did the Medicaid application or the years of resentment toward Gary. All that mattered was that 2 people in Tulsa were on their way to meet the son they never gave up on. I told Cole to take me to the FBI. I needed answers. 2 hours later, I sat in a federal conference room that smelled of coffee and old carpet. Agent Dana Blake, a woman in her 40s with a calm presence, laid photos across the table like she was sorting evidence. Each one revealed parts of a life I had never known. She told me again that my name was Noah Wade Hayes and showed me a picture of a young couple holding a baby. The woman's green eyes matched mine exactly, even down to the tiny gold fleck. I was born on March 15, 1991, in Tulsa, and was taken at 6 months old. I picked up the photo carefully. While the baby looked like any other infant, the woman holding him was unmistakably connected to me. Same nose, same smile, same tilt of the head. Agent Blake continued with the police report. On September 18, 1991, my mother was loading groceries when a woman asked her for directions. During that brief moment of distraction, someone took me from the shopping cart in under 30 seconds. The security cameras were low quality, showing only a faint image of a woman carrying me to a van. That woman was later identified as Carol Porter. Blake explained that Carol's real son, Ethan James Miller, had died in a trucking accident with his father in 1990. It happened in March 1990, not 1997 as I remembered, and the child was 3. Not 6. The memories I had about being 6 when my father died were likely stories Carol repeated until I believed them. She said this was common in child abduction cases. Children form identities around what they are told. Blake showed me a current photo of Laura Hayes, a woman in her late 50s whose face showed years of grief but also hope. She ran a center that had helped find over 230 missing children. My father, Stephen, worked with her after retiring. My younger brother, Aaron, now 30, worked as a contractor in Broken Arrow. She showed me a photo of him, a man who looked like me in another version of my life, same build and hands, but with a calmness I had never known. I asked if they were here, and she said they were in the next room. They flew in as soon as they got the call. Blake said there was one more thing. Gary had cooperated fully, telling them everything. When I was 17, Carol got drunk and confessed. She told him I wasn't Ethan, that she had taken me after her son died because she couldn't accept the loss. Gary planned to report her, but she begged him to wait until I finished high school so my world wouldn't collapse while I was still a minor. He agreed, and instead of telling me the truth, he simply forced me out. He thought he was protecting me in his own misguided way, believing that pushing me toward independence was better than letting me discover the truth too early. I said he always told me I wasn't his blood. Blake corrected me gently. I was someone's blood, Laura and Stephen Hayes's. They had endured 32 years of pain waiting for this moment. She asked if I was ready. I nodded, though I didn't truly feel prepared. When the door opened, Laura Hayes stood there in the doorway. She was smaller than I expected, but her presence filled the room. Her hand covered her mouth as tears streamed down her face. Behind her, Stephen leaned on the doorframe as if the moment might overwhelm him. "My boy," Laura whispered. "My baby boy." She stepped toward me slowly, like she feared I might vanish. When she reached me, she touched my face gently, confirming I was real. She said I had my grandfather's chin, and that she had wondered what I would look like when grown. Stephen moved closer and said they had never stopped searching. I told them honestly that I didn't remember them, and Laura assured me she didn't expect me to. Being 6 months old, I couldn't. They only wanted me home. She hugged me, and something long frozen inside me began to thaw. Stephen joined us, and for the first time in decades, I felt something familiar, real belonging. Behind them, Aaron appeared in the doorway, watching quietly. My actual brother. Laura whispered that they had so much to share and rebuild, but first she welcomed me home. 3 months later, I stood in the room that had once been my nursery. Laura had kept it exactly as it was: crib, teddy bear, alphabet border, and clothes waiting in the closet. She said she couldn't bring herself to change it. She always believed I would come back. Their home was nothing like Gary's. Photos lined the walls, including age progression images of what I might have looked like each year. They celebrated my birthday every year with a cake and an empty chair. Aaron grew up talking to my photo and promising to teach me things when I returned. Learning the truth about Carol was difficult. She received 15 years for kidnapping. In her confession, she admitted she acted out of overwhelming grief after losing her son. She saw me alone for a moment and made a decision that changed multiple lives. She used her son's identity for mine, moved frequently to avoid being found, and eventually convinced herself that I truly was Ethan. Gary received probation for not reporting the crime when he learned the truth. Emily contacted me after seeing the news. She said she always wondered why her father treated me so badly and now understood it was fear, guilt, and avoidance. She and I are slowly building a complicated but genuine sibling relationship despite her mother's actions. The Hayes family didn't just give me relatives, they gave me direction. The Hayes Family Center became my purpose, and I now work there alongside Laura, using my story to help other families. We have located 15 missing children this past year, each recovery bringing healing to both of us. Aaron brought me into his contracting company as a partner, saying he had years of brotherly things saved up. He meant it. Weekends, projects, dinners, this time they all counted. My former grandmother, Margaret Miller, still called me her grandson. She drove to Tulsa immediately and told the Hayes family she loved me for 27 years, and that made me hers too. They welcomed her without hesitation. The $52 from my wallet sits framed on my desk at the foundation to remind me that difficult moments can lead to change. The mill accident settlement was donated to the center to improve our tools and hire an investigator. Reading my case file showed how close the original investigation had been. They missed Carol by only one interview. One witness ignored something they saw. One guard forgot to write a license plate. One overlooked detail that might have brought me home decades earlier. Now, when I speak at events, I tell people to trust their instincts because one person can make the difference. I lived 32 years as Ethan James Miller, carrying the name of a child who died in 1990. I was pushed out at 18 by a man who said I wasn't his blood. not understanding that I belonged entirely to another family who had never stopped searching. Sometimes the hardest experiences are pathways to who we truly are. That flagged number didn't just reveal my past, it gave me a future, a family, and a truth stronger than any story I had been told. The boy who believed he belonged to no one discovered he was everything to someone who waited decades for the word welcome. Every loss can become a discovery. Every false path leaves clues back to the truth. Sometimes it takes a clerk, a flagged form, and the courage to follow the clues home. I was Noah Hayes all along, losing everything as Ethan allowed me to find who I truly was. If this story touched you, share it with someone who needs it. Leave a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe for more true stories of families reunited against all odds. Remember, someone might be searching for you.